welcome to Book Hooks. I'm Curren the director of the Azle Memorial Library, and I have 4 really awesome nonfiction books that just came out to share with you. So the first one, I have a little bit of a riddle. What do Cookie Monster, marshmallows, and SAT scores have to do with each other? Well, if you read the Marshmallow Test, Mastering Self-Control by Columbia University professor Walter Mischel, you will find out. So this book started with all of the culmination of research that Professor Mischel has done in his career. He studied willpower and self-control and kind of that whole nature-nurture debate of, is it something that we're born with? Can we learn it? And he's decided it's a combination of everything. And so it started in 1960. He performed the Marshmallow Test with some of his students. They got preschoolers and they put them in a room one at a time, and they had a table, and they had one marshmallow sitting down and said, you can either eat this marshmallow now or you can wait 20 minutes, which 20 minutes to a preschooler is probably forever, and you can have 2 marshmallows. And they would put the 2 marshmallows on the other side of the table. And so the research was not only to see how many kids would wait and get the 2, kind of the instant gratification, or eat 1, but also what they did in the meantime. Apparently they were pretty funny with how they kind of constrained their hands, because they would ring a bell when they were ready to eat the 2 and wanted to give up, and so how they stopped themselves from eating the marshmallow. So from that, they found that some of the kids who did really well with their willpower and waited for the full 20 minutes for the marshmallows ended up doing better in school. They ended up getting better jobs. And just overall had a little bit more of a successful life. And so through his other research, he's been able to study how self-control and willpower can really affect obesity rates, SAT scores, whether or not you get higher education and a graduate degree, and how you do in employment. So basically this book is what is willpower, what isn't willpower, how you can and can't control it, and how it can impact your life. And apparently there are techniques in this book that even adults who have their willpower ingrained in their system can make an impact in their lives. So should be an interesting read. Now the next book I have, if you've read the fiction novel The Martian or seen the movie that came out, I think it's funny, there's a lot of talk of people who've seen the movie and said, is this based on a real story? Like, did this really happen? And you have to think, we haven't been to Mars. Of course it's not. But apparently the book and the movie are very scientifically accurate. So with all this buzz about space, there's an actual book, it's nonfiction, it is real, called Leaving Orbit, Notes from the Last Days of American Spaceflight. It's by Margaret Lazarus Dean. And Margaret Lazarus Dean grew up going to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. She has a really passionate interest in space flight. And so even though she's just a professor and a writer, she kind of pursues space flight knowledge on her own on the side. And so she wrote this book. When she found out the space shuttle program was ending in 2011, she went to Cape Canaveral to watch the last 3 launches of the last 3 space shuttles. She also visits NASA's many buildings in both Texas, Florida, California, and you can really see her passion in this book. She not only talks about kind of the end of the space shuttle program and what's kind of the steps that led to it, but also the history of space flight. And you can tell it's a very energetic read. And I really love the New York Times review that was written about her in the book. They wrote, Ms. Dean writes with the passion of a lifelong lover of space exploration and an ability to communicate with tremendous kinetic power the glory and danger of its missions. So if you're into space, or maybe you're not, and you've maybe seen The Martian and you're kind of getting into it, this would be a really great book. Now I have a fun one that combines 2 of my absolute favorite hobbies, reading and cooking. Well, eating goes with that too. So the new book, Voracious, A Hungry Reader Cooks Her Way Through Great Books by Cara Nicoletti. Now Nicoletti grew up in her grandfather's butcher shop, and she would sit there in the corner and read and then watch her father or grandfather do his thing. And she grew up and became a butcher herself. She was a pastry chef, and obviously she still loves to read because reading is amazing. So she wrote this really fun book. Every chapter is based kind of on a different novel. It could be a kid's book, it could be kind of a classic novel, a new novel. I'm gonna check my notes here. She covers Little House on the Prairie, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, Lord of the Flies, In Cold Blood, Gone Girl. She even has one for Silence of the Lambs where she does a fava bean and chicken liver crostini. So she takes a recipe either inspired by these books or kind of based on the book that was actually mentioned in there, and gives you the recipe, talks about her experience with the book, with the recipe. It's gotten amazing reviews. Publishers Weekly gave it a starred review. They said Nicoletti turns both reading and cooking into eagerly anticipated visceral experiences. What a review, that sounds amazing. So I definitely recommend this if you love reading and cooking as much as I do. Now the last book I want to mention, I always love to throw a cookbook in the mix. There's a new cookbook out. It's by Sally McKinney, who does Sally's Baking Addiction blog, and she also wrote a cookbook of the same name, but now she's come out with Sally's Candy Addiction, tasty truffles, fudges, and treats for your sweet tooth fix. Now, there's tons of cookbooks out there, there's tons on candy making, but what I really love about Sally's Baking Addiction is every recipe I've made of hers has been on point. Her techniques, her ingredients, you can tell she does her research, and her recipes are really, really good. So I haven't tried a lot of things from this cookbook yet, but I have flipped through it. Some of them are fairly basic, your simple stuff like fudge and truffles, but she does go in depth into ingredients and equipment and techniques that are very unique to candy making. So I think this would be a really good book for someone who hasn't made candy before and wants to try it out, or someone who has but wants either kind of a nice go-to recipe or an alternative recipe. So for example, she has 9 fudge recipes and 7 truffle recipes in this cookbook. So give it a try. Based on the cover of the book, they look really good and really cute. I think it's going to be a really sweet book. All right, well, we'll see you next time. Thanks.